Hello world! I still can't get over this. I got a new green screen. Oh wait, it went. Okay, there it is. Sweet. And now for this. Hello, welcome back, part 2. Welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. This is officially my second live stream on the new branded channel. Tonight we're going to be finishing up the app that I started yesterday. So let's take a look at that. Look at me, I'm floating! This is so cool. Okay, let me do that, and let's get into this. So yesterday, we started building a full stack app with JavaScript. We're using vanilla JavaScript and DOM manipulation on the front end, and fetch for AJAX requests and Bootstrap, and then Postgres, connects, and Express on the back end. So yesterday, we got both the front end and the back end going. We can view all of our products. We can view individual products. So I'm going to go ahead and start up the apps so we can see them. And just a quick note, actually I'll bring it up on GitHub. All of the code that I wrote yesterday is currently available on GitHub, and as I write it, I'll be pushing up these commits so you can see the code in real time. GitHub.com/w3cj, if you go to product-crud-client, this is all of our client-side code, and if you go to product.crud.server, this is all of our server-side code. So check that out. Quick stretch, we're just getting started, but look away from the screen, take a stretch, get ready to write some code. Okay, cool. So in this folder, I have both the client and the server folder as two separate folders. Essentially, if you clone these down, make sure you create like a parent directory to have both of them in there. You don't want to put one inside of the other. But I'm going to go ahead and go into my server folder and then do npm run dev, and that will start up nodemon, which will get our backend going. And then in a new tab, I'm going to go up one directory, into the client directory, and then use light server to start up our front end. And there it is. So we're building a web store. We're creating, reading, updating, and deleting products. And this is what we got so far. So on the home page, you can see all of the products. They have a title, description, a price, quantity. And then if you click on any individual product, it will take you to the individual product page where you see all of the same information, but you're going to get some buttons to edit. Today we'll add a button to delete. And that works for any product that you click on. Excuse me. Cool. So yeah, we're listing all the products. We're listing a single product. Next up is to create new products. So here in my checklist, here is where we are. Create a record with posts to /API/v1/products. So let's get back into this. So in the server directory, I am going to go into my API folder and then product.js. So this is where all of our backend routes are. We have our route that gets all of the products. We have the route that gets a single product. And now we're going to create a post route that creates a product. OK, so right below that route, I'm going to do a router.post. And this is going to be on /. So this entire router is mounted at API v1 products. So when a post request comes into this URL, it's going to hit this request handler. Whoa now. Res. And what do we need to do? So we created the route. Cool. Now we need to validate the product. So in Express, when you're receiving the data from a post request, your data is in rec.body. And so we want to make sure that when they are sending us a new product, it has a title, it has a price, it has a quantity. We want to make sure it doesn't have anything extra, so we're going to need to validate that. For this, because I don't have a front end yet, I'm going to use Postman. So this is a tool that allows us to send requests to a server and inspect the response and kind of get things going. So I want to make a post request against /API/v1/products. Here in Postman, on the body, you want to make sure that says raw and then JSON. And let's just do a simple post request. We're going to say title is let's add LaCroix to our store. LaCroix. Cool. But what I wanted to show is when we make this post request, we're just going to be logging the body, which is the body of the request that the server actually receives. So over here, well, you might not see that because that's where I am. Let's go over here. So in our node logs, I'm going to make this post request, and see, we see it. So it's still spinning because our server isn't responding with anything, but we're actually sending that data to the server. So if we look back at our example files, essentially this is what we want to send to the server. I want to send something like that, and of course it has to be valid JSON. Make sure you put double quotes, and you'll have to convert all of your single quotes. But if I post this, well, can we stop it? Cancel request. And it's spinning because in our backend route, we're not doing anything with it. But that's okay, I know that. So I just want to make sure that we can send the data. So we can send that data, now we want to do something with it. First thing I want to do is validate it. So I want to make sure that it has a title, that it has a price, and that it has a quantity. So let's do that. So right in here, let's just say if valid product, and then we'll pass in rec.body. Then we're going to insert into the DB. Else we need an error. So I'm going to bring in my handy next function, and very similar to before where we said invalid ID, here I'm just going to say invalid product. And then when we call next with that error, that goes to our error handler and then spits something back. So let's create this valid product function. I'm just going to do it in this file. Later on I might refactor it, but I'm just going to have a function, call it valid product. This takes in a product. And we want to make sure that it has a title. And we also want to make sure that the title is a string. So let's say, I guess we'll just start writing it. So we'll say product dot title. So we'll say type of product dot title is a string. So we're going to make sure that it's a string. And we want to make sure that product dot trim. So trim is a built-in JavaScript function you can run on a string that removes white space from the edges. So if they send us like a bunch of spaces and we trim it, it's just going to go down to an empty string. So I'm going to say if you trim the product and it's not equal to an empty string, then this is a valid product. So a valid product has a title that's a string and a product.title and a title that is not an empty string. It's also going to have a price. So I'll say type of product dot. Well, we don't want it to say type of because, well, we should. Actually, let's look at the log again. So when we're sending the price, that should be a number. We want to make sure that that's a number and that quantity is a number. So for that, I'm going to use built into JavaScript, this is nan. So I'm going to say is not nan product dot price and product dot quantity is not nan. So basically this is just a big long conditional that's checking all the things I care about on the object. So if the title is a string and the title is not empty and the price is a number, is not nan, so is not a number, and the quantity is not a number, then this is valid. I think another thing I want to check though, we want to make sure that the price is greater than 0. I guess you could add quantity 0 because maybe you just have like inventory, like empty inventory or something like that. But I also want to check product.price is greater than 0. You cannot have free products in this system. I decide, I'm making it. Okay, so that function is there. And so we're going to say if valid product rec.body, then we're going to insert into the database. So let's go ahead and just create a product object. Now, I totally could just send rect.body into my insert query that I'm about to write, but what I want to do is just make my own object so that if rect.body had other stuff on it, we're not sending that to connects, which would throw some errors because those columns wouldn't exist. So if the title, no, not the title is going to be a rect.body.title. And actually, I'm going to use destructuring for this because destructuring is fun. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say we want the title, we want the description, we want the price, and we want the quantity, and we want the image from rect.body. So this is essentially going to pluck out all of those properties from this object, and then we can just use them. So I'm going to say title, description, price, quantity, and the image. And for now, I'm just going to log. Actually, I'll res.json the product. So I'm just going to send back exactly what you just sent me, just to make sure that this is working. So when we receive a post request, we're first going to validate the body to make sure that it has a title, that it has a description, a price. Description is not required. So we're going to make sure that the title is a string, the string is not empty, the price is not nan, and the price is greater than 0, and the quantity is not nan. If all of that is true, we're going to create this object and then just send it right back. So let's go to our log. So this is a valid product. So if we send this, we should get it right back, totally. But what if we do the price as 0 and send this? Boom, invalid product. So that's good. What if we have a price? Sorry. If we have a price, but the title is an empty string? Invalid product. What if it has no title at all? Invalid product. So our validation is working. It's doing what we want to do. Now, this isn't the best error message because it's just saying invalid. It's not telling the user like what they got wrong. We could do that. I don't feel like it, so we're just going to do this. Awesome. So now that we're validating the product, so we're validating it, let's create the query. So in our DD folder in queries.js, we can create a method to create the product. So I'm going to create a method called create that accepts a product. And here we're going to do our connection, which is our connection to our database with connects. So on the product table, we want to insert product. Okay. So it's that simple. And now over here, we're actually going to use that query. So I'm going to say queries.create and pass in the product. Then we get back, essentially it's the thing that got created, but let's call it result. And then we will res.json the result. Let's see what happens. Okay, so now is the time where we create the LaCroix. So LaCroix. Description, a refreshing beverage. Price, I'm going to go with $1.99, and currently in my fridge I have 3 of them. And then we need a LaCroix image, so let's find one. LaCroix. I want something larger than that. That one, coconut flavor. I actually haven't tried that flavor. I'm just gonna upload this to Imager to give us a nice small URL because that's long and processing. That was a really big image. Okay, copy image address. That's what I need. So over here, we're gonna insert with that image. Go! And it gave us something back. So insert, and it's basically information about what command that just run. But what I want to get back is the ID of the thing that just got inserted, because the idea is on the front end, after I click, like I fill out the form and I click create, I want that to redirect to the single product page to actually show the product. So here's what we do. Go to our queries. And when you insert, I believe you can say comma ID, and this means after you're done inserting that thing, return the ID of what you just inserted. So we need to create something else. What are we going to create? Duct tape. Description. Fix all the things that are moving. Cool. Our duct tape, $2.99. We got 10 of those, and let's find us a duct tape image. Isn't this fun, finding images on the internet? Duct tape. Hello, Cassandra Ray. Dang. In the chat. Welcome to the live stream. This is the one I want. It's a really big image. That's fine, though. And again, let's just upload this to Imager. Go. So duct tape is commonly referred to as duct tape, but duct tape is actually a brand. Duct, D-U-C-T, is the actual term. Fun fact. All right, and create. And we get back the ID. But notice that this is in an array. That's not very useful to me. I want it to be like an object with a property ID and the value itself. So let's fix that. So I know that this, so if I do a dot then on here, this gives me back essentially an array of IDs, even though there's only one. It is an array of IDs, but I want to return just IDs at 0, right? Because this array has the ID inside of it, and I just want to give back the ID itself. So that is returning just the ID. So now in the route, we can call this ID, and then I'm just going to return an object that has an ID property. Cool. Let's create something else. I'm looking around for inspiration. I guess we already have shoes. We're going to do a webcam. Break timer, look away from the screen, reach into the sky. Take a drink of your tangerine LaCroix. Okay, what did I say we're going to create? Oh yeah, a webcam, because I'm looking at one. Film yourself live streaming. Cool. This one is going to be $69.99. We only got 2 of those. And let's find an image of a webcam. Webcam. Actually, this is the exact webcam that I am using right now. Let's put it on Imager. Copy image address. And we will throw the image there. Send it, and we get back an object that has an ID property with the ID itself. We're creating stuff. Fantastic. But check this out. When I go to the homepage, all of our products that we just created are there. Isn't that great? That was exciting. They got the right price. We can click on them. We can view the individual product page. That is a giant LaCroix. We can click product, view product. We see the individual product page. It's happening. All right, back to the checklist. Create query, we did that. We did actually a lot of other stuff too. I should probably put that in the checklist, but regardless. Okay, so we have the backend route. We can use Postman to do it. That's great. But your users don't know how to use Postman. They only know how to fill in a form. So to the front end to create a form. So let me close all my backend stuff. I'm going to go ahead and close Postman too. Don't need that for now. And in the client, we want a file called new. Actually, I think earlier I called it create. Yeah, create.html. So I'm going to call it create. So in this folder, I'm just going to duplicate the index because we want the navbar and everything else like that, but I'm going to go in and change it so it's specific to this page. So I'll duplicate this to create.html. Cool. And now we're in create.html, and we'll bring in the shared file. So this, a quick review of the client-side code. We have this shared.js file, and this has functions that are being used by multiple pages. So for one, we have the API URL. We have a function that grabs the ID from the query string. So you'll notice when I click on a product, the query string is in the URL. Our code actually grabs that ID and then makes a request for one single product. And then we also have a function that adds the product to the page. So we use this function both on the all products page and the single product page. But we need another file for create.js. So let's create that. Cool. I guess not yet. We need a form first. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so right here, inside of the main area, I want to create a form so that they can enter their information about a new product. So display a form with input boxes for all the fields. So we need title, description, price, quantity, image URL. Let's go to the Bootstrap docs to look at how to make forms. Documentation, components, forms. Cool. So we're going to have a little form. It's going to look a lot like this. So I'm just going to go ahead and just copy this form. We'll update it to say the things, have the things that we need. So right in our create.html, inside the main, I'm going to throw this form. And first thing we need is the title. And we'll call this title. The type is text. The ID will be title. So ARIA, this is actually accessibility stuff. Won't worry about that for now. Sorry, but we're not gonna do that. Enter a title, and then we don't want any help text. We're just gonna display the input. And I'm gonna use that as an example. And then we have our submit button. So we have our title. We also need a description. And this is actually going to be a text area. Gives them a little more room to write stuff in. Enter a description. I don't believe we need the type on a text area. Let's see what we got so far. So on the web store, top right, if I click create, this takes us to this page, and this is our form so far. So you can put your title there, put your description there, you can submit the form. I'm going to add a quick style that just kind of pushes the form down a little bit, add a little bit of margin on top. So I'm just going to do it in line because it's really basic. Don't need to create a separate file. So I'm just going to say main, margin, top is 1em. There we go. It's a little nicer. Okay, so we got title, we got description, we also need price. I know I don't want to do a drop down. I do want just an input area, but I guess if I give it a type of number, then they can only enter numbers into that area. So we'll do this right here. We'll call this price. Actually, let me make my chat a little more visible. And this is going to be an input with a type of number. And we can get rid of the closing tag. We won't have a placeholder. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, so if I do $9.99, that's okay. But if I try to type stuff, look, I'm typing, it's not working, so that's good. So $9.99. So we got title, description, price. We also need a quantity. It's going to be also a number input. Quantity. Quantity. And that actually reminded me, we should probably validate on the back end that quantity is an integer because we don't want to have like 1.2 of things. I think connects might take care of that if we try to insert a float. I don't know. Okay, and then quantity 5. Cool. Let's fix that real quick. Sorry. So take a step back. On our server side, when we are validating the product, we also want to make sure that quantity is an integer. I guess quantity should be greater than or equal to 0. Wow. Okay. We need to validate a couple more things. I'm sorry we missed this before. So, and actually, let me look that up. I believe there is an is integer. Number.is integer. That thing. Determines whether the passed in value is an integer. that is what I need. So number.isInteger. So if quantity is an integer and quantity is greater than or equal to 0, then it's valid. Okay, I digress. Cool. So we got the title, description, price, quantity, and the last thing we need is the image URL. Let's actually just throw that below description. So we're going to call this image. We'll call this image. And placeholder is going to be http://yourimage.com/image.png, just so they know that that needs to be a URL. Cool. All right, so we have displayed a form with input boxes for all the fields. Cool. Display a button to submit the creation of the resource. So we have this fancy submit button here. Let's do button info. So instead of that black button, it's a cool blue button. And validate all the inputs. Okay, so first thing we need to do is listen for the submit event handler of this form. So when the form is submitted, call a function that will essentially get all the data from the form and send it to the API. So let's do that. So in our create.js, which we have brought in down at the bottom here, I'm going to first get access to the form. So this is going to be document.querySelector. We're going to pass in form, so that'll give us the form. And then I will want to listen for the submit event. And then I'll create a function called form submitted. Cool. So function form submitted. This takes in the event because it's an event handler. And here I'm just going to log submitted. Now let's see what happens. So I can enter some stuff. Cool. But if I click submit, the page refreshes and the form empties out. This is because by default in the browser, the form attempts to make a GET request against itself, which clears out the form and refreshes the page. Quick little note on DevTools. I believe, where's it at? Yeah, so if you go in here and do preserve log, because notice what just happened. Like, okay, watch the console. Because for a split second, it said submitted, but then it went away. If you go in here and say preserve log, when the page refreshes, your logs don't go away. But you did notice that it logged, but then it navigated to a new page. We want to prevent it from refreshing. So over here, I'm going to do event.prevent default. And that basically says, whoa, browser, hold it right there. I'm going to do some stuff with JavaScript, so please do not refresh the page. And now, when I submit the form, it doesn't refresh, it just logs that. Cool. And I'm now going to disable this preserve log, but it's a handy tool if you didn't know it was there. Boom. Okay, so now when we click that button, we're running that function. The first thing we want to do is validate all of the inputs. So make sure, honestly, the same validation we're doing on the back end. So make sure that the title is not empty. Make sure that the price is greater than 0 and is a number. Make sure the quantity is 0 or more and is an integer. I'm going to basically do all the same things on the front end. So I'm going to create a function, call it valid product. And this will take in the product and basically do the exact same validation. To get all the values from the form, we're going to use form data. So I'm going to create an object called form data that is a new form data, and you pass in the form. And what that does is it allows you to grab the different values of the inputs and text areas and then use them for something. So in my case, I am going to create an object that is the product. So we're going to say const title equals form data.get and then pass in title. And then for now, I'm just going to log the title. And we're not using this function yet. Let's get rid of it. So when I submit the form, create this form data object, try to get the title from the form, and then log the title. Let's see what happens. So title, hello world, submit, null. Okay, so lesson number 1 in forms. If you want to use this form data object, hey Job, This is not, it's not Vue. We're doing vanilla JavaScript. So this form example is for anybody using HTML and JavaScript. But as I was saying, if you want to use form data with your form, you must have names on your inputs. So on this input, notice I have an ID, but I don't have a name. So I want to give this a name of title, because then in my JavaScript, I want to say get title. So now this should work. So if I say hello world and submit, we're grabbing it. Cool. So actually, I'm going to validate these things one at a time. So that way I can like update an error message up at the top of the page. So on Bootstrap, I'm going to grab an alert. Let's get this danger alert. And we are just going to throw this at the top of main, right there. We're going to give this an ID of error message. And you'll notice when the page loads, it's empty by default. So I want to hide it, and then I'm only going to show it if there was an error with the form. So when the page loads, we'll go ahead and grab it. So I'll say const error message equals document.query selector for the thing with the ID error message. And immediately when the page loads, we're just going to say error message dot style dot display equals none. So we're basically just hiding that alert when the page loads. But you'll notice if you look at the element inspector, it's there. It just has display none, so it's hidden. Cool. So first we will validate the title. So I'll say if title.trim is equal to an empty string, meaning they didn't type anything in the title, then we want to update the error message. So I'm going to say, first I'm going to take a break. If you're watching at home, look away from the screen, reach into the sky, take a drink of your tangerine LaCroix. I'm not sponsored, but I should be. Cool. So if the title is empty, we want to show an error message. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do error message.textContent equals title is required. Boom. And if this happened, I'm just going to immediately return, which means it jumps out of the function and doesn't keep doing anything below it. So now let's try it. So if I try to submit it with empty, nothing happens. Why not? Oh, because I need to display the error message. It was hidden. So I'll say error message.style display equals empty, which shows it, and then well, I'll set the text content and then I'll show the error message. Okay, so if I try to submit this with no title, title is required. Very cool. Okay, but if I try to submit this with a title, no error message. Cool. So we validated the title. Now let's validate the description. Can be empty, so we don't need to validate that. Let's then validate the price, because that is required. So if well, and then we need to get the price. So I'll say const price equals form data.get price. And remember, we need a name. So on the price, we're going to add a name of price. Cool. And I'll say if price is nan, meaning it's not a number, or price is, well, actually, I need to, so watch this. If I log price, this is actually going to be a string. So by default, when you, even though this is a type of number, I believe if I use form data, maybe, oh my goodness, maybe it's not. Maybe form data actually converts it to a number. So if I do have a number here, okay, it's a string. Cool. That's what I thought. So string, the price here is a string, so I want to actually convert that into a number. So what I'm going to do is just say number, and then pass form data.get price into number. And so now I can check so if the price is nan, and if you were to pass like a string into number, you actually get back nan. So if I do number and they typed that, it'll give you back nan. So if it was nan or the price is less than 0, I think that was our validation. Let's look back on the server side. Price must be greater than 0. Okay. Yeah, so if price was less than 0, then this is an invalid price. So we'll say price must be greater than 0. And then we'll return. So now if I have a title and then I try to submit it without a price, nothing happens. Let's log it. Oh, interesting. I wonder what happens when you pass nothing into nan. What? Lame. Okay, so here's what I think is happening. If you pass an empty string into number, it gives you back 0. Fucking JavaScript. Okay. That's okay though. It should still show the error message because price, less than or equal to 0. Okay. Submit. Well, first title is required. So if I do that and then I submit, price must be greater than $0. Cool. And then lastly, we want to validate the quantity also. So we'll say quantity is same thing. Number form data to get quantity. But remember, we need the name on the quantity. So name here is quantity. And we're basically going to do a very similar validation. Actually, we're going to do, instead of isNan, we're going to say is integer number dot is integer. So if it's not an integer and or the quantity is less than 0 and the quantity can be 0, we'll say quantity must be a whole number. Cool. And that should do it. Okay, so if we have a title and then we have a price, $9.99, but we try to do like quantity 1.2, wait, what? Price, because the type is number, it's giving me an error when it's $9.99. So this is the built-in form validation of the browser. 9. Whoa, okay, time to go to the docs and look at the types for the input. This is my longer break timer. I'm gonna take a quick stretch. But I'm gonna keep at it because this is interesting. So somehow number can only be a whole number. Let's look on MDN for input type. Non-numerical values. Can I say like type float? What is happening? So I guess maybe I can't use number if I want to allow a allowing decimal values. One issue with number inputs is that their step size is 1 by default. If you try to enter a number with a decimal, it will be considered invalid. If you want to enter a step value that requires decimals, you will need to reflect this in the step value. Interesting. We learn something every day. So this is what I need on my input type number on this one, so on the price. But for quantity, the browser is doing that validation for us. So if I try to do $9.99, so we have a title, and then we have a quantity, try -10. Quantity must be a whole, we'll say a positive whole number. So, okay, if we leave off the title, title is required. If we add a title, price must be greater than 0. So 1.2. So 120. And what? Oh, when you leave this empty, it's 0. So by default, if they left quantity empty, it would be 0. Cool. And also on image, let's give this a type of URL because that should do some in-browser validation. So if I do this and try to submit, please enter a URL. So the browser does that on our behalf. Okay, so we're validating all the values. Now we actually want to send it to the server. So at this point, if the title and the price and the quantity and everything else are valid, we're going to go ahead and create a product. So product is an object that has a title. It's going to have a description that we will now get from the form. So form data.get description. And we'll need to add that name, so we'll do that next. It also has a price, which is that variable up there, a quantity, which is that variable up there, and then lastly, image, which is going to be form data.get image. Okay, so let's go add these two names to our form. So description is going to have a name of description, and image is going to have a name of image. Cool. So when they submit the form, we do all this stuff, and hopefully we log a valid product. So let's try it. So title is going to be candy bar. Description, it is tasty. An image, let's just grab a quick candy bar image. Works for me. I was thinking of a Snickers, so perfect. That's our image. Price $1.99, and we got 30 of them. Submit. We get this fancy little object with all the properties that we need. Now let's send it to the server. So that's there. I'm then going to create a function. Let's call it create product, and we'll pass in the product. We'll just leave that for now. So I need a function called create product that takes in the product. And here I'm going to use fetch. This is going to go against API URL, which we defined in shared.js. So we're making a post request against this URL. And then we'll take the response, turn it into JSON. But we need to specify some options. So by default, fetch just does a GET request. So what I want to do is pass an object of options that tells it that the method is post. We also want to set the content type header to be JSON because we're sending it JSON data, so the server needs to know that. So I'm going to create a headers object. It's going to have content type, and the value is going to be application/JSON. And lastly, the body of the request is going to be JSON.stringify product. So we take this object, turn it into a JSON string, set that as the body, and then post it to our server. And so after creating the product, we then are going to get back the ID, and we are going to redirect to the single product page of this specific product. So I'm going to say a window.location equals, we're going to go to /product.html where the ID is equal to the ID. Well, no, this is the result, and it's going to be result.id. Cool. So we fill out the form, we validate everything, we create an object, we send a post request to the server with that stringified object, and then once the product has been created, we redirect to the single product page of the product we just created. Let's see it happen. Okay, I need a bigger image of a candy bar. That's decent size. Let's grab that. I'm going to upload it to Imager. Look at that. Okay, let's create it. So we're going to do title, Snickers bar, description, it's tasty, comma, and chocolate. There's the image, the price, $1.99, and the quantity, like I said, we have 30. All right, moment of truth. Let's see what happens. Oh! Created that product. So it created it on the server and then redirected to product ID 9. And we have the image, the title, the description, the price, and the quantity. And if we go to the overview page, we got our products. This is great. This is great. We're doing it. All right. So we validated the inputs. We made a post request. And we successfully redirected to the single product page. Wow. This is great. I just remembered I forgot to commit the backend, so we're going to commit the backend and commit the front end. So let's do that. So in the server, we created the post request. So I'll add everything. Sparkles, add create product route. And then in the client, Sparkles, add create product page. Cool. All right. Update a record with put to /API/v1/products/ID. So the idea here is we should be able to edit an existing product by making a put request. So for this, we're going to go to the server side. Let's close all of our client side code. And now on the server side, in our router is where we're going to need to create this. So right about here, router.put. Is that right? I think technically it could be a post request against product/ID. We'll do a put request. That's totally fine. So put to /ID. It's kind of similar to the get one route is going to grab the ID and validate it and like get one. In this case, we're going to update the row in the table that has this ID. So we have the request, we have the response. Let's look at our README. So we created the route. We then need to validate the ID, validate the updates, meaning make sure that it's still a valid product after receiving it. And then create the query. And actually, I'm changing my mind. I'm going to make this a post request against ID because typically in a RESTful API, if it's a post request, I think, is it? I don't know. I think I'm confusing myself. Let's look it up real quick. So RESTful API verbs. Update/replace. Okay, so technically we are replacing it, so this can still be a put request. Cool. But we also need to validate the ID just like we were doing, where am I at? Just like we were doing in the get a single product route. So here's what I'm going to do. Because basically I could copy all of this code, right? And I could paste that in, and then now instead of creating, we could update. But that's duplicate code. So what I'm going to do is create a middleware function that essentially does this, and then I can use it on both of my routes. So this right here, I'm going to call, we're going to call this valid ID. And because it's a middleware, it takes in a request, a response, and next. And we're going to do that. But basically, if it was valid, we just call next, meaning go on to the next thing. But if it wasn't, then we're going to return back invalid ID. Now watch this. So now on the get one route, it gets much simpler. So we add valid ID as a parameter there. And then I can get rid of everything else. So now, when this route gets hit, first it goes through this function and makes sure that rec.params.id is not an and is actually a number. If it is, it calls next. When it calls next, it then essentially goes into this handler that I defined and does the get one. But if it was invalid, it returns an error. And let's just try that out real quick, because in the browser, if we make a request to localhost 3000/API/v1/product/99, not found, but what we were testing was if I do the ID, something like that, invalid ID. So our middleware function is working. It's pretty handy. So now down here on the put request, instead of having to do all that again, I can just add valid ID, and now I'm validating the ID from the params. Cool. So what we want to do is, so we did that, validate the updates. So basically I want to do a very similar thing to what I was doing whenever I created the product, valid product. And actually let's turn this into a middleware function too, because both the creation and the update are going to check to make sure that all of the properties are there and of the right type and everything. So here we go. So let's call this function valid product middleware, only to differentiate it from the valid product function. And this again takes the request, response, and next. And we want to do all of this, but we're going to get rid of some code. So basically do all of this, but instead of doing the creation and the insertion, we are just going to call next. And now we can use that on our post request. So if valid product, then we can just do this and get rid of this extra code. Cool. And we basically are going to do something very similar, but we need an update route in our queries. So in the queries file, we're going to say update product. So we're going to get the ID and the product. And here we want to do very similar things. So we're going to return connection on the product table. We're going to update, we're going to say where the ID is the ID, we will update with all of the fields from the product. I think that's how that works. It's been a while since I've done this. But this should attempt to update the product with this ID inside of the database. Job asks, is an integer valid in the price field now? I'll come back to that. Remind me. But I think it shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. We'll see. Okay. So we are, unless you're running the code locally, I'll look at that in a second. Okay. But I'm thinking about it. It troubles me. Okay. So we want to update the product where the ID is the ID and use the fields of the product that we just created. Cool. And actually, I want this to be a function too. Let's make this a function. We'll say const product equals get product from body. Rec.body. Cool. And then I'll create a function, get product from body, that takes in rec.body. And essentially we just want to return the product here. But now, well, it takes in body, and here we'll just do that. So this function takes in essentially rec.body, picks off the fields that we care about, and then returns just an object that has those fields. So I want to do the same thing here, but then it'll be a little bit different. So I'll say queries dot update product, and it's going to be rec.params.id, And actually, I totally forgot to use the valid product middleware. So first we validate the ID, then we validate that the body of the request is a valid product, then we attempt to update. So we'll see queries.update with rec.params.id and this product that we just extracted from the body. And then should just work. So we're going to res.json, a message, updated. And we're not using next right there. And I guess we're not using next there because we pulled it into a function. Cool. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to bring up Postman to do this. And we are going to attempt to update a product. So I'm going to grab my MacBook Pro. And I know that this is... whoa, sorry. No, I want to update this. So, we'll just update this one. Sorry. Okay, so actually, let's go to the front end and see what is the ID of the webcam. So this is ID 8. So I want to make a post request against products/8. Sorry, not a post, a put request against products/8 because we're going to update the product with ID 8. And let's change the price to be $79.99. So right now it's $69.99. Will it work? Cannot read property ID of undefined. Router.put Parmas. I think what I meant was Parmesan. Parmesan? Parmesan? No, params. Okay. Simple mistake. We all do it, right? No. Okay. Put request against products/8. We're going to attempt to update the price of this thing to $79.99. It said updated. And if we refresh the page, $79.99. Fantastic. Okay. So that works. We could also update the description. So film yourself live streaming. It's fun. CJ said so. And if we do a put request, now over here, it has a new description. So our put request is working. Also, let's try making a put request with like an invalid value. So like a price of a -100. Invalid product. So I could not send this update because all of the data was not valid. So that's working as well. Moving right along. Ooh, well, that's a really cheap webcam. Okay, we don't want that. We're going to go back to $69.99. Cool. Let's look at our README. So we validated it. We created the query. Awesome. So this should be put. Sorry. Okay, let's commit the backend, and then we'll go ahead and create the edit form on the front end. Yeah, that's good. Let's go into the server folder. Add update product route. Push it up, and if you're following along, you can now pull it down. Cool. But back to what Job was saying, is an integer valid in the price field now? Let's try it. So on our front end, if we attempt to create with something that has an integer price, I guess technically it should be valid though. Okay, let's try creating a burrito because it's what I had for dinner. It's microwavable and kind of good. An image, we're gonna definitely need an image of a burrito. These look much better than the burrito that I had for dinner. Okay. Gonna upload this to Imager. Stop it. Okay, so there's our burrito image. So what we're asking is, can we do the price as just 10? And the quantity, we have 5 of those. That's valid, but that's actually okay because when it gets inserted into the database, the price does get converted to the decimal type, which has a decimal places in it. That's not why it's called decimal. But so that technically that still works, and I guess it's okay because then the user doesn't have to actually type in 10.00. So that's okay with me. But thanks for looking out. Okay, but now we need to create an update form. So we are going to close all our backend code to the front end. And the thing is, our create page has exactly the form we need, but we just essentially need to pre-populate it with data for that specific product so we can actually edit it inside of the form. I hesitate because I don't want to just straight up copy this file. I wish we could reuse it in some way. We probably could. I'm just going to copy it. That's a refactor for later. So I'm going to duplicate this and call this edit.html. And then down at the bottom, let's pull in edit.js. And then we'll need to create edit.js. Okay, so when the page loads, well, for one, now we should be able to, so notice when we click this, it takes us to edit ID equals 10. We now actually want to pre-populate this form with all of the data for the product that has ID 10, because then the user can update it and then click submit. This is my break timer. Look away from the screen. Take a quick stretch. Okay, and I realize we're a little bit over the hour mark, but I'm almost done with this. I'm technically almost done. I'm almost done. I gotta finish this page, maybe 5-10 more minutes, add a delete button, 2 minutes tops, and then we gotta deploy. But I will be here till we finish this app. Okay, right, so when the page loads, we need to grab this ID, make a request to the server to get the product with this ID, get back the data, fill in the form, and then when the form is submitted, we make a put request. Okay, a lot of stuff to do. Let's do it. Okay, so we displayed the form. Good job. We just copy and pasted. Validate all the inputs. Well, actually, I don't have a checkbox for it, but we actually need to get the product with that ID. But handily, in our shared.js, we have already created a function to get the ID from the query string. So let's use that. So I'll say product ID equals get ID from query. And when the page loads, we should be able to grab that product ID, and we do, 10. The other thing is we need to get the product with that ID. Technically, this is not in shared, but I'm going to move it in there. So in product.js, I actually have this get product function. I'm going to move this into shared so that I can use it on my edit page, right? Cool. So on my edit page, I'll say when the page loads, get product with this product ID. And then we're going to populate form with product. Cool. So now I need a function called populate form with product, and this should give us the product. And for now, I'm just going to log out the product. So when the edit page loads, we're going to get the product with the ID from the query string and then just log it to the console. So yeah, so right now I'm on edit where ID equals 10, and we're just logging out the product with ID 10. Cool. So now I want to take this data and put it into the form. So it basically pre-populates. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and create a variable for my form. So document.query selector for the form. And here's what we'll do. We'll say form data equals a new form data with the form. And then just like in our it was our create page, form data has this get method. I believe it also has a set method. Let's see if it works. So I should be able to say form data.set title to be product.title. Let's see what happens. So when the page loads, nothing happens. Okay, let's look it up. Form data.set. Oh. Well, I guess that sets it on the underlying form data, but it doesn't actually update it on the page. Okay. Easy enough. So instead of creating this form data, let's not do that. I essentially, on the edit page, I want to select the input that has the ID title and set its value to be the product title. So let's do that. So I'm going to say document.query selector, where the ID is title, and I want to set its value to be product.title. Let's close this stuff. Cool. So when the page loads, it puts the title in. Let's do the same thing with description. Cool. And do the same thing with image. Cool. And do the same thing with price. And the same thing with quantity. Boom! Okay, so when the page loads, it pre-populates the form. So for any product, like if I go to this MacBook, I view it, but if I click the edit button, it will pre-populate the form with all of the information about that specific product that I just clicked edit on. Cool. Notice I have that little error thingy up top. So let's hide that. So this is called error message. Let's create a variable for it. And when the page loads, let's set error message.style.display to nothing. And now we're almost there, because in our create page, we have already created basically all of this validation. So I'm going to pull this into a function so that we can use it. Yeah, wow. Okay, let's do this. So basically, all of this I'm going to put into a function. So in shared, I'm going to create a function. I'm going to call it validate form send data. Okay, so for this, we need the form, we need the error message so we can display it, and we also need basically the method that will do the sending. So then we'll say send. So validate form, send data, redirect. This does a lot of stuff. So it grabs the form, it sets any error messages if there were, and then calls the method, and when that method is done, redirects to the single product page. So let's use it. So on our create page, basically, instead of doing all of that, wait, no, don't do that. But I do basically want to get rid of all of this. So I want to pass in the form, I want to pass in the error message, and the method I want to pass in is create product. Cool. That's really cool. So now essentially on my edit page, I can do this, but instead of create product, we'll say update product, and I'll have to create that function. which takes in the product. Yeah, let's see if it works. So actually, let's just return product promise.resolve product. I think. I don't know. But basically, I just want to see on this page, if we click submit, will it just redirect to the product page on the edit page? Edit.js line 5. Oh, we need to select the thing with the ID error messages. Cool. And we want to set the display to none. Cool. So when the page loads, hide the error message, pre-populate the form. If I attempt to edit, then it does attempt to redirect. So I think that's working, right? So if I try to submit this without a title, boom, title is required. So the validation is working. Let's get this going. So update product is going to be a fetch against the API URL, but it needs to be against slash product.id. And then our method is going to be put. Our headers are going to be the same. So content type is application/JSON. And then our body is going to be JSON.stringify the product. And then we get the response, and we'll turn that response into JSON. Cool. So if we look at our create JavaScript, it's doing a similar thing. I think the only issue is, so in this method, this is hoping that the result actually has the ID on it, but in our update method, we're not sending back the ID. Okay, let's just call this validate form get product. And we're not going to pass the send in. We're just going to return the product. This is getting a bit confusing, but when it's all done, take a look at the code. It makes sense for the most part. So on the create page, after we do this, so say product equals that. We'll say if product is a thing, meaning it actually returns something, then we're going to create product with the product, and then we'll redirect like that. So we want to do a similar thing inside of edit. So we'll say const product. We'll create the product, and then we get back an empty result, but we're going to redirect to product.id. Here's what I'm thinking though, because product gets created in this function and it doesn't have an ID on it. But when the edit page loads, this product does have an ID. Actually, we can use product ID. Cool, because that's in the query string. So we should just redirect to product ID. This is getting confusing, but we're almost there. And in edit, I don't want to create product. I want to update product. Cool. Let's see if it works. Okay, so on the edit page, it loads all of the data. And let's try to update the title. So we're going to say MacBook Air. If I click submit, validate form send data redirect is not defined. Why not? Didn't I put that in shared? Oh, I renamed it. Validate form get product. I have definitely been coding too long. I'm almost done though. I'm almost done. Okay, page loads. We're going to change the title of this MacBook to MacBook Air. Submit. And it didn't update. Let's look at our server logs. So we attempted to do a put request against undefined. Okay. So in here, this shouldn't be product ID. This should be product underscore ID. So it makes the request against the correct URL. Okay. Now if we go to edit product and we change this to MacBook Air and we click submit, it worked. Okay. We're doing it. We are doing it. Let's check some boxes. Okay, so we validated the inputs because we're using the same method as we did for creating. We made the put request and we successfully redirected to that page. Very cool. Okay. Actually, one thing I'll do is on the edit page, instead of saying submit, let's call this update. And on the create page, instead of saying submit, we'll call this create. So now on the edit page, it says update. Cool. And let's update that to be 1,099.99.99. Cool. Okay. Next thing, we're almost there. We have created, we have read, we have updated. Last thing, delete. So we need a delete method on our server side. Let me go ahead and commit the code we have. So our backend has been committed. Let's go into the client. We have added the edit page. Cool. So now on our backend, actually just a second. Cool. So on our backend, inside of the route, last thing we need is a delete request. This is my break timer. Take a quick stretch. And we lastly need a delete method. So this is basically going to be a router.delete. And when this delete request will come into a URL with the ID of the thing we're trying to delete. This, of course, also needs the valid ID middleware. And then we get the request and the response. And then we'll do it. So we have created the route. We have validated the ID. Now we need to create the query. So right here, I'm going to call this method delete. We get the ID in. And then I'm going to do connection on the product table where the ID is that ID, delete. And that will remove it. So now we can use that query in our route. So I'll say queries dot delete rec dot params dot id, and then we should get back a response, but we're just gonna send back JSON that says deleted. Cool. And I did call that delete. Yeah. So create, read one, read all, update, delete. We're almost there. Let's test this route. So if we look back at the front end, let's look at all of our products. Which one should I delete? I am going to delete this Snickers. So this has an ID of 9. So now over in Postman, I'm going to make a delete request. It has no body. And this is going to be delete products/9. Go! Deleted! And now if I refresh this page, it'll break because I don't think... Yeah, undefined. 404 cannot find. I probably need some logic in my get a product to make sure that it actually exists. But it deleted. So if I go back to this page, we no longer have the Snickers bar. So that's working. We'll create like a 404 page later. Yeah, so that's working. So now we'll go ahead and commit the backend, check a box. But we simply just need to add a little button that makes the delete request. And we are done. We are done. Okay, add a delete button to the product page. So on the single product page, we'll look in here. So notice this is adding an edit product button. We also want to add a delete button. So we're going to throw in another button. This will be we'll have to get more specific with it, but it should say delete product, and we can do button danger, and that should be a red button. So now on the single product page, let's go into this burrito. We have this delete product button, and we basically want to add a click event listener to this. When we click it, make the delete request, and then just redirect to the all products page. So let's do that. This will not have an href, and we actually will make this a button. It should still look the same. Yeah, still looks the same. But let's give it an ID of delete. So after we add the product to the page, we're going to add a click event listener on this delete button, which will actually make the delete request. So I'm just going to say const delete button equals document.query selector. For the thing that has the ID, let's call it delete button. ID delete button. And then I'm going to say delete button dot add event listener. Click. So when we click this thing, we're going to run this event. And for now, let's just log delete button clicked. So now, delete button clicked. Cool. So now when I click that, I want to make a delete request. Let's do it. So let's say delete product with the product ID. And then we will then just redirect to the home page. So I'll say window.location equals /. So that goes back to the home page, and the thing was deleted. So let's create this delete product function. So function delete product will take in the ID. And this is going to be very similar to all the other requests we've made. So let's do, yeah, it's very similar to this, but actually simpler. So we want to make a delete request against the API URL. So Job asked a question. He says, could you make a redirect to your main page in the delete function? Maybe the stream's delayed a little bit. Yes. When the button's clicked, we're actually going to redirect to the home page. Is that what you were asking? I think it was. You let me know. So method is delete. I don't believe, yeah, actually we don't need a body and we don't need any headers. This should just do it. So I'm going to go against API URL /ID. So this should be a delete request to the product. And then we redirect to the home page. I think this is it, guys and gals and everybody else watching. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. Okay. Click the delete button. It deleted, and it's no longer on the products page. It worked. I'm excited. Okay. That's CRUD. That's create, read, update, delete. Baby. Okay, that was weird. I'll stop doing that. That. Okay, let's review this beautiful app that we have created together. All right, so you go to the home page, you list all the products in the system. Every product has a title, a description, a price, a quantity. You can view an individual product that takes you to the product page with its ID. On this page, you can edit the product. You could update the price to be $299.99 if you wanted to, and the price will be reflected in the database. If we go back to the main page, of course, you'll still see that update that we just made. Yeah, and then if you don't like something, I do like LaCroix, I'm not going to delete that. But if you don't like something, you can go in and click the delete button, and that will delete the product. Create, read, update, delete. We're doing it! Okay, that's pretty much it. Now we need to deploy. I think I can get that done in just a few minutes. I have been streaming, how long? An hour and 25. It's not so bad. Yeah, let's deploy this thing. Let's get this thing on the interwebs. All right, so we're going to deploy the server to Heroku. I believe, so let's go up one, let's go into the server folder. Heroku create. I don't know. I have a cheat sheet. Let me find it. Heroku cheat sheet. Heroku create and then name. So it initializes a Heroku app and adds the remote. So let's do that. So we're inside of our server folder. Actually, let me make sure I commit on both. So let's add everything. Sparkles, add, delete, route. And okay, so it's all committed. I'm gonna do Heroku create CJ's store. Let's see if it's available. Hey, it's available. That's a cool URL. Okay, so I created it. We then need to add the Postgres add-on because I do have a Postgres database. There we go. Cool. And now I actually need to update my backend code to include a production database connection. So in my backend code, inside of the connects file, I'm also going to add a production one. It's going to look very similar. The only difference is this is going to be an environment variable. It's process.env.node.env. No, .database URL. Because whenever you provision a new Heroku, Postgres database, it automatically creates this environment variable, so your server can connect to it. So I think that's all I need. Let's try it. So I need to commit this. Rocket. Prepare for deploy. And I think that's it. Yeah, so let's do git push Heroku master. Let's make it full screen. Go. Is deployed. So now I need to run my migrations and then my seeds on Heroku. So if I look at that cheat sheet, Heroku run connects migrate latest. So what this does, so Heroku run spins up an instance of your Heroku app and actually executes this command. So we're essentially going to be running the migrations on the remote Heroku server. Let's try it. Heroku run connects migrate latest. Moment of truth. Huh. Yeah? Hey, it worked. Okay, let's see it. Okay, so now if I do Heroku run connects seed run, this should seed it with our sample data. This is too easy. It's too easy. Okay. Heroku open. We get our hello world, and if I go to /API/v1/products. Yay! Sweet. And those of you watching at home, you can totally, it's a fully RESTful API. You could go in and add a bunch of weird products if you wanted to. Actually, if you can do that in the next minute or so before I deploy the front end, that would be fantastic. Add something funny, please. Okay. Cool. So I deployed the back end. Let's deploy the front end. So let's go into our client folder. And for this, I'm just going to use, well, actually, what did I say I was going to use? So we logged in. Well, we already had the Heroku CLI. We created it. We pushed it. We didn't view the logs. That's okay. But we are on the internet. And we added the database. We added the production connection to connects. We ran the migrations. We ran the seeds. Cool. Now for the front end, I'm actually not going to use Firebase. I'm just going to use this tool called Now, because all you have to do is type Now, and it will deploy your front end code. Oh, I have to update my front end to point to Heroku. Okay, let me do that. I totally forgot. But that gives me a cool little deployed URL. It's working? What? Oh, because it's hitting localhost. That's why it's working. But let's update the code. So in shared.js, I believe this is the only place I have the URL. Here's what I want to do. If I want to say if window.location.h.hostname is equal to localhost, then the API URL should be that. But if it's not, then it should be cj's store.herokuapp.com. HTTPS. cjstore.herokuapp.com. I think that's right. Let's double check. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So now, when we're running locally, hit the local database, but when we're running on some deployed server, hit the Heroku app URL. Cool. So let's add everything. Sparkles, prepare for deploy. Oh, and let's add a rocket emoji too. Okay, now to deploy with now, I just type now again. It'll give me a new unique URL. Cool. I think that's doing it. Yeah. And the other cool thing about now is it lets you alias. So instead of this weird long name, I can do now alias that thing to be cj's-store. And then if that's available, and it is, so cj's-store.now.sh. And boom! We're talking, we're on the internet. So if we look at the network tab, let's refresh it. Take a quick break. Let's look at that, and that made the request to Heroku. We got back the data, we added it to the page. I think somebody deleted something? I don't know, but we can still view individual products. There they are. We can edit products. So let's make this $69.99. Our skateboards are going on sale. Sweet. That's it. We're full stack. We've deployed. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been an incredible time. Yeah. Let's maybe do a quick review of what we did. I don't know. We kind of already reviewed it. It is a video. You can rewind it. Cool. I just want to remind you, if you have any requests for other tutorial videos or walkthroughs or live coding like this, just add it as a comment and I'll see what I can do. Thanks so much for watching. Tell your friends, like, comment, subscribe, all the things that famous YouTubers say. I don't know. I've never been one. But I have something for you. First off, hello. Isn't that cool? Woo! This. Like I said, thanks so much for watching. See you next time.